Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ahlan wa sahlan. Marhaban. Welcome, everyone. I hope you guys are all well. Right, so this is Naveed, as you guys can see in the image. He looks a bit crazy. Yeah. But
Looks.
chalo. It's normal. It's normal, guys. So
You can
hope
tell
you guys are all
our
well.
arms are
Hope you
these
guys are enjoying
professional.
yourselves. Can you guys hear us? Is the sound working properly? Is it clear this time? This time, hopefully, I've got the settings right. You know what I need to do? I need to make a tutorial on how I do this. Because you know what's going to happen? 3 or 4 months' time, I'll
Yeah.
forget how I done all this. Yeah, and all that kind of 10-hour research I done to try and find out how to connect your computer audio to the YouTube.
You
Yeah,
can
it's all
ask
in there.
Altaf for some help. He looks like he's plugged into the Matrix.
Actually, it does, it looks like, like it's communicating with, what's that thing? What's that computer? That kind of virus.
Skynet.
Which one?
Skynet.
No,
Skynet.
I think that's a wrong film there. I think.
Is that
You can
Altered
tell
Carbon?
you guys got all the sound equipment, everything going, books. I've just got a plain white wall. Camera's just flat
No.
working.
You got the Qari's background. You got such an echo there, man. Muslims would be
Allah.
jealous of you, bro.
I'm in the meeting room.
Are you in the meeting room?
Yeah, there's a few brothers here. They're talking quite loud.
Alhamdulillah. We're now live on Facebook as well, Mufti Sab.
Okay, alhamdulillah. I thought you were live early on. I need to put my.
I was winding. I was winding
Astaghfirullah.
Naveed up. Naveed, this is what good lighting gets you, bro. It gets you noticed, bro.
Astaghfirullah, Mufti ain't got a thoban.
Oh my gosh, he hasn't got a thoban. What
Astaghfirullah.
on earth? He's been exposed
We can't
live on
accept,
Facebook.
we can't accept anything he has to say today.
You know what? I was looking at his thumbnail earlier on Facebook. He looked quite good, to be fair. Do you know what I mean? It did look quite good. His thumbnail, it looks like he's got it all professionally set up now, man.
Mufti Saab,
So yeah,
I'm chasing.
are those your pajamas?
no,
Is that your loungewear?
yeah, that's that kind of like my balancing the deen and dunya way.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Actually, you know what? That would be a good like a department in clothes stores. Yeah, the balanced deen
dunya.
and dunya look. Where you have those kind of
Why
Islamic clothes that look like.
have you got ketchup in your office?
Have you seen those kind of like Islamic looks where it looks like the guy's like wearing some sort of like a kung fu suit or something?
Yeah, I like them.
Is it like that Turkish
Yeah.
style?
You know, when I think
Almost.
about that, I think to myself,
Shukr.
like, why do people think that's Islamic? Is it because it looks very like uniformed? Things that look uniformed are
modest
always.
Modest clothing. It just looks like one of Naveed's, when Naveed wears women's t-shirts.
No, actually, that t-shirt's good. Remember that t-shirt you had? You still got it?
I've got a few of these t-shirts. I'm wearing one now.
Yeah, that's a good one. That long
Aren't they
one.
called maxis? Maxi dresses.
No, they're called long line t-shirts, brother.
Long line. All right. Just unsold maxi dresses that they made you wear.
You wouldn't know, bro, because we shop at small shops, Primark, H&M. In Selfridges and stuff like that. It's probably called something else, bro.
Yeah.
What if you shop online? What does that put you?
He doesn't need to shop. He's in the Matrix. He's plugged in. He just says, "Oi, be."
Oh yeah, I'm plugged into the Matrix, right? This guy is plugged into the Qari's, the Qari's room of recitation and echo.
I'm
Every
actually in
masjid's
Masjid Aisha
dream,
right
bro.
now. I'm in Masjid Aisha.
That's what.
All right. So come on, let's start then. So Altaf, you wanna start off?
God. Yeah, okay, so one of the things that we wanted to cover today is why people find it difficult to navigate. Like, being Muslim, one of the things that you normally find very difficult to do is like discuss controversial issues. And I just wanted to kind of like see how we can unpack that, because obviously, like, with various things taking place in the world around Palestine, various things taking across the world, like, the brother that is brother Tox, who's been kidnapped and or arrested rather, sorry, by some. Who's he been arrested by now?
I don't feel comfortable discussing this with you on a podcast.
But anyway, so I think it's one of those things is that where people can people comfortably discuss controversial issues without getting in like trouble with work or any other place, because I think people feel are very, very scared about discussing things. And
Hi, friends. Hi.
I think being Muslim makes it like
So
doubly hard
okay,
sometimes
so
as well.
what makes something controversial? Like, is it that it'll get you in trouble, or the possibility of getting in trouble? Is that what makes it controversial?
I think for me, Mufti Sahib, controversial is where the power lies with somebody else, or the mass voice is with someone else, and basically you're taking the other side, so you're taking the smaller side. It is sometimes like can be controversial, and is where you're going against the norm.
Okay. So for example, I mean, when I hear the word controversial, I mean, maybe I think of something which is like usually sort of like an issue that's racism, something that borderline racism, borderline political, some sort of like a political issue, borderline sort of like issue in Islamic sort of like discourse. So I don't seem to understand what exactly it means for something to be controversial. Like, does it mean that you'll get in trouble saying it? Does it mean that we shouldn't be kind of publicizing this kind of stuff?
I think you're not going with where the mass is, the mass of opinion is. So like you're going completely against the norm. So in Islamically, like you'll find controversial opinions are those opinions which don't conform to the norms that everybody has, or that the norms that everybody's built up over a period of time.
Okay.
But I'm sure if you went through some of the old rulings, Mufti Sahib, some of them, and you didn't ascribe them to a scholar, some people might find some of those controversial until they find out who came up with it.
So okay, so okay, controversial in that case, what you're saying is would be something which is kind of creating some sort of a controversial means what? What's that?
I'll read it. Controversial, giving rise or likely to give rise to controversy or public disagreement.
Yeah, okay, I was about to say that actually. MashaAllah. I was about to say that as well. Yeah.
Going against the mass noise.
So controversial would be something which would, like we would say, create fitna in your community. Yeah, that would be something which is controversial. But then the question would come, sometimes for something to happen, don't people have to talk about something controversial sometimes, not all the time? Like
you have to be controversial if you're gonna
because that's the argument some people will use.
Develop.
What you might deem as controversial might not be controversial to someone else though.
Oh, philosophy there. Philosophy 101.
Nav's trying to come in hard before he's got to run off.
That's a Rumi, bro. Rumi there.
Bro,
yes,
every
okay.
day there's a new brand of water, man. What's this? Cardelen or Cardelen? Anyway.
Cardelen.
Turkish.
You made it sound Arabic.
I know. It's Islamizing everything, bro.
What are you being controversial for, Mufti Sahib?
Yes, okay. So, like I was saying, so like some people may argue, like, okay, if we don't talk about this thing, how are we gonna break taboos, or how are we gonna, let's say, for example, like maybe open the discussion to something which would, holds a possibility to be discussed.
So let's have a difficult conversation, basically.
Yeah. So, for example, like things which, for argument's sake, ruqya and magic being like, something which Asian families blame when there's mental issues. I'm not saying that everyone does that. What I'm saying is that this is the kind of like area when you start talking about this, as in maybe
controversial.
Yeah, maybe it's something like you're not kind of like totally shunning the idea of there being magic or this concept existing, or you're not saying that there isn't a concept of jinn possession or something like that. What you're saying is, okay, we don't want to conflate the two mental issues with issues that are related to these supernatural sort of like events. So then where do you like when should you not talk about something controversial? Do you ever think of that?
Yeah, I think the things that you try not to speak about that are controversial are kind of like things that you think or deem may get you into some form of trouble. Particularly I think most people don't talk about controversial stuff because either they don't understand it, they don't really want to go into the topic or the area, or secondly, they think that it's going to get them out of trouble at work, or in their daily life that they go about. They think that it's going to compromise their life somehow. Like, because nowadays, if you say something controversial on Twitter, on Facebook or anywhere, what happens is that people will find out exactly where you work. They'll report it to your employer, and you see so many people getting sacked on the back of things that they've said online.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot with people being vilified simply because, like, recently they disagreed with a certain aspect of, let's say, BLM.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't disagree with the concept of racism being wrong. They weren't saying racism is wrong, or they weren't saying racism is right. What they were basically saying was certain elements of the BLM movement we don't agree with. Now, in this climate at the moment, I could understand it'll be controversial. But let's say, for example, like it was a few years ago, for someone to say that on Twitter, or, it wasn't really a hot topic. Similar, you can say post pre 9/11, if someone was to talk about, I don't know, they want to start learning how to fly planes. Yeah, that would have been fine. But now when you talk about flying planes and Muslims and things like that, it just becomes something which is, actually, we shouldn't talk about this because it could get you in trouble. You could, raise a few red flags.
No, I think that's quite true. That there's things that can raise those red flags, and I think most people are just really worried about stuff like work, and how that is going to impact them on that side of it. So I think it becomes a bit like, how do you preserve yourself within a certain place? Like sometimes scholars won't talk about controversial stuff because they're maintaining their position.
But would you see that as something wrong?
Yes, and I think it depends on what the issue or the topic is. Like, I don't think you can get through life without steering clear of every controversial issue that exists. I think you got to pick and choose in it. And I think the people that steer away from everything, I'm not sure whether they have much traction or empathy with the community. I don't think they connect with them. Because if you steer away from absolutely everything, then you're never going to be dealing with topics that are important to people. And sometimes they're looking for leadership on these issues as well. And sometimes, it might be the role of the scholar to dismiss the controversy. So take 5G and Wi-Fi and all of that kind of stuff, right? There were scholars who, I'm sure it was because they were in lockdown, right? That wrote lengthy Facebook posts on this issue.
Saying what?
Is 5G connected to coronavirus or the 5G towers? Do you remember that?
Okay. Yeah.
We should make a list of the people that said that and now tag them back in their old posts. From my experience, I think there's certain communities who are more sort of vulnerable, or not vulnerable. They're more, what's the word for it? Addicted. Susceptible.
Addicted to controversy. As in, they get a buzz out of it. Now, I remember, and this is in no way disrespect to Pakistan. Yeah, obviously. But when I was in Pakistan, they were, one of the famous things that people used to use.
Wait. Stop, move this up. How many minutes is that in, Nav? We're 17 minutes in.
So one of the things one of the common things was, they would say things like, if they disagreed with a particular individual.
Sorry, Mufti Saab. One of the common things that they used to say, I'm a qualified pilot.
Oh, that's too funny, guys.
Sorry.
So you're the one out of three.
How many of them actually got banned? How many of them hadn't actually passed a proper test?
These kind of facts and figures, it's very difficult to kind of analyze whether these facts and figures are based on like proper surveys, or is it just something just random, like some test was done with some people and was it commercial planes? Was it just other types of airlines? But yeah, one of the things when I was there, it was one of the things that used to kind of create lots of controversy was this issue of polio drops. So polio illness. Yeah. So it was like, it was this thing like if you said no, people should get, these what do you call it? Vaccinations. You should get these vaccinations, right? Because they help the children fight off, illnesses that are killing, a lot of infants. And they would say immediately the answer would be, as though a lot of people would, I had friends, they would say to me, no, how can you say so? These polio drops are there to kill Muslims and make the women, infertile. And now we don't really have facts and figures. We don't have surveys done, tests done to show that this is the case, right? And it just seems to be based upon, so as soon as you say something against that, immediately you get this sort of like, people just giving all this backlash on why, how come you talk about, you're supposed to be with us, you're supposed to be, as though the default state is polio drops are wrong. So, I mean, I personally think it's a very tricky area. So I asked the question in the beginning of what is controversy. I mean, do you not speak about anything if you see something wrong? In the sense, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke up against the things that were happening in his community, I mean, that according to the definition that Naveed's given, that would have been a typical example of controversy. You're speaking about the rights of slaves and the rights of women and the rights of, various individuals in your community.
Society keeps changing and what's accepted keeps changing. So something that you might say, which we find might seem controversial in a few days, months, years time.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, in our times today, I think there seems to be this kind of, the woke movement.
Yeah.
The woke movement seems to be a movement which is...
I wish they fell asleep, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why they want to wake. Someone should just take a nap, chill out.
So, I mean, I think a lot of that kind of stuff is like a total a reaction to people not wanting to talk about things controversial. It's like they want to talk about everything controversial. They want to speak about everything. And I can understand that this can lead to things which it's going to be bad for the community.
Some people have built a career or a reputation of just talking about things that are controversial just because other people are not willing to speak about it.
So there's actually a brother who wrote, this is my audio okay still?
No, it's not.
No, it sounds like you're holding a piece of fabric over your face. It's gone better now. It's gone better again.
Is that better? Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's better.
What I was going to say is that, so somebody was mentioning this, you're talking about, sometimes people just talk about controversies. Like on YouTube and other social media online platforms, obviously there's algorithms with things that are trending, so controversial things. Like, I'll give you an example. That Hassan Minaj clip that went around this week?
The dua one.
The dua clip that went around. So like there were loads of people that were recording, responses to it or reactions to it. Yeah. Now, they were really trying to speak about controversy because it aligned with the algorithm. Some of them aligned with the algorithm on YouTube so that their video would be relevant. If you get what I mean. So like it would come up.
I've yet to watch the video. Has anyone seen this dua thing that he's done?
No, I haven't. What has he said?
So basically, he's making a dua, and he starts off like fine. He reads Bismillah. He reads Rabbana Atina, and he starts making dua, and then he starts making dua, and it sounds as if he's asking for like he's trying to take the mickey, like he's saying, Ya Allah, protect us from plaque. Protect us from this, protect us from that, and he goes into kind of like a little bit more descriptive things as well. And I think he the way that he does it, or the manner that he does it, is that he's looking around the room and looking for reactions. But he's a comedian, and
okay.
So I think a fellow comedian, sorry to interrupt you, bro, reacted to some guy called Preacher Moss.
Okay.
And I think even he's tried to advise him, saying like, chill out a bit. I don't think it didn't go down well with the Muslim community. I don't think there's being controversial and there's being a what's the word? Yeah.
No, I get that. But I think the point was kind of like where there's people that are making response videos to him just to be relevant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like there were tons of them. I'm not talking about any of them. There were a couple of good ones as well. Like the Ilm Feed one was quite good. They did like Shabir's reaction to it, and I thought that was quite good. He was like,
we should get Shabir on here one day,
Yeah, we should actually. But I think that response video that was all right. But like,
this is just simply clickbait. People are gonna want views. I mean, every YouTube channel, every sort of online organization is gonna want to sort of profit from that kind of stuff. That's what makes views. But then the question would come that is that because the audience likes controversy? So I didn't watch this dua thing because if I see something which just seems a bit dodgy, I just say, no point in me watching. What's the point in me watching it? Like, what at the end of it, what am I going to get at the end of it? Am I going to get upset at what he said if he said anything wrong? Am I going to just waste my time watching what he's done? But I know there would be people out there, like, if you remember, like, Imran, it was like Amir Khan thing. Amir Khan, his wife, remember a few years ago. And it was like, I went to this doctor's surgery. In the doctor's surgery, there was like someone talking about, did you watch the Amir Khan thing? He's the latest. It's like they love controversy. They wouldn't like to see him in a happy family. They would like to see tomorrow her come out and say something against him, or him come out and say something against her. It's like our own community, Muslim community, unfortunately, being human beings, end of the day, have this inclination towards, we like controversy. We don't like the norm.
Controversy, sorry Mufti Sahib, I think is intertwined with entertainment now. And people are only entertained when something is controversial. That's the only thing that will catch their attention.
That's something. Okay, so that's something that's been in humans for a long time, and social media simply just amplified it.
Yeah.
I mean,
social media is like a steroid.
Looking at it I put up the other day on my Facebook. I put up this post. I think it was yesterday. Was it?
Ali Radiallahu anhu quote.
Yeah, Ali Radiallahu quote. And
very good post. That
quote basically, he says, you don't you don't have to tell people everything. Like, sometimes what tends to happen is, it's happened to students of knowledge. You learn something in like a scholars gathering, like some private scholars gathering. A scholar will tell you some like really kind of juicy, like, facts, and then you think to yourself, right, I've never heard this in a talk. I don't think any of my friends know this. Right, let me go and write a little article on there. Let me just go and say it to my friends. And so if it's something very controversial, maybe it's some scholar's opinion regarding eating certain types of meat, or something else. And then all of a sudden, you'll get someone who goes around, saying this to people, and he doesn't even realize that my audience that are watching this, there's going to be some people who's going to have a really big impact on. I didn't realize this. I didn't really realize this, when I first started the YouTube channel and social media. What I would get sometimes is, I would say something which I assume to be very sort of like a normal default position. I thought that was a default position in certain issues. And then I'd get people contacting me saying, you know what, I've thought this all my life. Are you sure this is what the scholars say? Because this is what I've always thought. That this is like, like, I remember once, I told my mom something like, when the azan's heard and the women have to put their scarf on their head. I just said to her, look, this isn't something from Islam, by the way. This is a cultural thing. It's a good, if you want to do it out of respect, that's fine, but it's not necessary for everyone to do. Yeah, and she got angry at me. No, how can you say this? This is like, this is something that we have to do. Yeah, that's it. And then it's like, the Ali Radiallahu was basically saying that, look, speak to people according to their understanding. And social media, it just destroys that. Because social media is designed that you're going to speak to people who you never imagine are going to, read or listen to whatever you're saying. So you got to be very careful in how you kind of explain things to people. So that's why I don't put too many posts up, right? Because I personally feel as though I don't think a lot of people are gonna be able to appreciate what I'm saying, because they haven't gone through the experiences in life to be able to understand.
They're not on your level, Mufti Sahib. You're over here.
Allah Akbar, Allah. With that light in the background, can you see that light? Allah, the noor coming from my finger. Allah.
This looks like your finger's actually on the light, Mufti Sahib. But I think when it comes to like looking at some of the, because there's a couple of comments on YouTube as well, Mufti Sahib, where people are kind of like saying that, yeah, you know what, it makes sense around, not speaking about controversy because it affects your, can affect your job and so on and so forth. So I think kind of like just understanding and respecting that part of it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the job issue. That's going to be like a big issue for everyone. I mean, me, myself, you guys as well. I mean, there are certain things that we have to know our limits in what we're talking about. But when it comes to certain things, for example, like you might say something now, and then it bites you 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line on social media.
It's true.
Right? Because we said things in the 90s, and we got away with it. Yeah, because there was no social media then. But now all of a sudden, what the new generation doesn't understand is that when you're saying something, you're always going to be like kind of like retrospectively reviewing your life in the past. So you know, on Facebook, when you see your memories again and you realize, what did I say? Look at my English. Yeah, look how I said this. Did I even think about what I was saying? But at the moment, you were in the moment at that time, and at that time, it made sense to you. But now, when you look at it, you think, you know, why were you so strict? Why were you so extreme for? Or why were you so, you know, whatever, messed up? And it kind of like, you know, it kind of segues into other things. That's what I'm saying.
I read something the other day, made me really, really cringe. It's a line that I wrote, brother, your genes are true religion, but are you following the true religion? And I just read that and I was just like, did I say that?
Oh, is that what you said?
That's the line that probably made you famous then.
Allahu Akbar.
Allah. 700 people like this. You know what I'm going to do? I need to write a post saying something this. Make sure you share this status, otherwise you're an idiot. And hopefully I'll go viral. That's my plan.
No, 13 people have to share this, otherwise, you know, controversial. Something controversial is going to happen to you.
You know, the other thing as well, Mufti Saab, controversy in general, I think, because certain things that were never in the public limelight, certain discussions amongst scholars, certain positions, now because of the age of digital media and social media, the world's kind of become a global village. So stuff that was probably said behind closed doors, like, you know, in private gatherings with mashayikh, one guy that's sitting amongst them, like you said, will write something or leak something, and now, unfortunately, everybody that's at home twiddling their thumbs in like a pandemic or whatnot, they need something to, you know, pass their time. So controversy in times of boredom, I think it becomes even more interesting for some people. And stuff that isn't really controversial has become controversial, I'd say, because an opinion might exist in private and it's not a mainstream position, but when you bring something to the public domain, it becomes controversial. The opinion itself, do you understand what I'm trying to say? It always existed. It wasn't controversial when it was in that circle, but when it got brought outside that circle and for the public to see that can't comprehend what somebody's speaking about, it becomes controversial. Would you agree? Or have I confused everyone?
No, I totally agree with that. I think I understand that totally, because that's for like a scholar, a graduate. Scholars and graduates have to tread carefully, especially when it comes to, you know, communicating with the public and, you know, how you work. Because what can happen with scholars is that sometimes a lot of scholars they don't have that sort of like exposure to the public in real life, so they don't know exactly how far they can go in discussing certain things. Like, I mean, if you kind of think about the Indian subcontinent sort of style bayans, you look at the content of what they talk about, the average, and you look at the kind of like very controversial things they'll say on the mimbar, and you said that same things over here in English, you know, you could get done for that. Yeah, you know, you could go prison for that.
Whenever you say Indian, whenever you say subcontinental talks, all I think about is fir aaya, fir farmaya. I never used to get those ones, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I remember when I was young. Yeah, when I was young, and I remember in Central Mosque. Yeah, there was like, you know, because in them days, in the early, like, you know, late 90s, you know, when you had like Khatm Nubuwa and these kind of conferences in Central Mosque, and you had like some guys turning up, people could say anything in them days. It was like there was no holds barred there. And then you used to think this is what Islam is about. You have to talk about all these things. You have to say anything as you want, right? And that's what Islam is. So you know, a lot of people felt that they could talk about anything, and it was fine. But then later on, when you realize in society, no, you're not supposed to talk about all these things. And then you're thinking to yourself, well, how come back home on the mimbar in Jum'ahs they can talk about, criticize the leader, call him this, criticize this guy, you know, these guys are agents of this particular country in the world, or you know, I mean, it's like so is it that controversy is something that spills over from religious individuals into, you know, is it because
possibly, but not just religion, Mufti Saab, even like something might, like I was saying earlier, like something might not be controversial, but then a particular political party might come into action who have made something which was the cultural norm at that time something that is controversial now. Do you understand? Like, you gave an example of Khatm al-Nubuwwah. Like, we know it all fine and dandy. Couple of years later, let's just say even in this country, but maybe I reckon it'll happen in America first, that might be considered as something as hate speech. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And or even though something so normal for majority of the world might be considered as something controversial, when in essence it's not.
I think. Did
And
you
even
hear? Have you heard about
think this is
in
controversial.
Pakistan they're planning on building a I think it's a Hindu temple. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I read about
Around
it.
about Islamabad, near there,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like causing a big controversy. It's like that's a typical example of the public, voicing their opinions regarding this, whether they have a valid reason to voice their opinion, or whether they have no valid reason to voice their opinion, or scholars talking about this. So sometimes I think to myself, is it right for a scholar to, if it's an issue that's to do with the government, is the scholar voicing his opinion because he wants the public to kind of agree with him? Yeah, is he trying to gain the public's attention here, or is he basically trying to get the attention of the leader? So I don't know. I mean, is social media the right place to kind of talk about these things?
I think it's just an outlet to themselves. They just use it as an outlet. So like everybody's got an opinion on anything and everything. Like whatever's happening in the world, suddenly you find experts all over your Facebook. Right. And then what happens is that every once in a while it will be your topic that people are talking about, and you get overly protective about your topic. So like, say for instance, it comes about a very particular part of Islam, teaching Arabic Muftisab. Like, that's your domain, right? But I would be able to comment on it if I wanted to, with like zero or little or no knowledge, right? I'll be able to comment on it, and everybody will comment on it, and you'll feel protective about it. But then say there's another thing that comes up, right? You'll have an opinion on that, and that might be that might be somebody else's area of speciality. So we do veer out of our lanes quite often, and everybody does it all the time. Even the people that say, stay in your lane. If you're going to stay in your lane, get off Facebook. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're obviously not wanting to be in your lane by being on Facebook. So I think sometimes like we get it a little bit confused. I think the problem occurs is when you're trying to be an expert in an area you're not. It's like me trying to say, okay, guys, I'm going to teach you Gurdans today. It's like, but you don't know one yourself. Do you know what I mean? It might be a bit like that. And that's the problem. But like, everybody veers off. Like, I've seen some popular scholars within our community that like will always, that will always kind of promote that stay in your lane thing. And then you read some of their posts, and they're veered so far left sometimes, it's ridiculous.
I think, like I said before, bro, sorry to interrupt you. I think the woke people need a nap. I don't know if they should go to sleep completely, but they definitely need a nap. And people need to chill out a bit, bro.
Yeah, see, but see, the way I see is that when you say something like that, it sounds very, very, very sort of like correct.
Harsh.
No, it sounds correct.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Islamic thing to do, that woke people should be quiet. But then the woke person might, like, he might assume that, look, I have to speak up against these things. He might see it as being like a vice that he has to speak up against. So it's easy for us, like, it's easy for a scholar to say, stay in your lane. But then someone can turn around and say, well, who's going to talk about these things? All right, if you're not going to talk about them, if you think you're going to lose your job as a scholar, or you're going to lose, your reputation online, then, this is why you've got X, Y, and Z speaking about this topic.
When sometimes a scholar says to me, stay in your lane, I said I would, but there's nobody in it.
Yeah. It's a very kind of catch-22 situation. What do you do? Yeah, like, do you not talk about it? Do you talk about it? Do you kind of like discuss? I don't know. How would you guys?
You find
Social
that
media.
You self-censor yourself.
Sorry?
Do you find that you self-censor yourself?
That's it. I mean, sometimes I feel when a particular topic comes up, or sometimes someone tags me and asks me a question. That's one of the things that I totally sort of like don't answer on social media. So if you guys ever tag me on something and say to me, like, you tag 4 or 5 scholars, and you say, like, is white wine vinegar halal? Right? And I can imagine those scholars looking at each other thinking, forget this. We ain't got time for this. It's like, is it? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, mashallah, mashallah.
You just respond, Mufti Sahib, depends on how hungry you are.
I mean, that's the kind of
spoken truth.
again, it goes back to the issue of, you know, people feeling it's their right to be able to ask a scholar anything online, and that scholar should be able to give them the answer. Yeah, and I remember I saw it with the other day. I think it was someone on Dr. Yasir Qadi's post. Some guy was saying, you know, you answer people in French, but you don't even answer my questions. I've been asking you for. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes I get in my DMs. I get like about, you know, 10 or 15
sliding into Mufti's DMs. You get me?
questions. Yeah,
DMs, bro.
and then I just like kind of open it, and it's like all these questions. I'm thinking, oh my god, if I open one, if I answer one, it's gonna come up on everyone else that he's he's come online. So you know what? Just forget this. I'll answer it. You know, when I'm free, totally free, when I can answer everyone. Then if they got any that, you know, reply to ask, I can answer that.
Is it better for you to divert all your traffic on your live Q&A now?
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't
that's,
that easy for you?
yeah. So the
You know,
controversy.
staying in your lane, diverting traffic. Do you
Yeah,
see what I
diverting
mean?
traffic, exactly, going off the junction. Yeah, and so I think people have this kind of expectation that online scholars should talk about the haqq, and they sometimes blur haqq with controversy. Yeah, it's like they expect scholars. Why doesn't like Mufti Taqi Usmani talk about this topic? Like, why doesn't Mufti Taqi Usmani talk about that topic that's happening in the West? Or why doesn't scholar so and so talk about this? So I don't know really.
I think lots of people go through that. Like at the moment, like with the Black Lives Movement, like you see a lot of white folk that are going through like difficulties in understanding, you know, their own fragility when it comes to the whole topic. Like they don't understand like how sometimes they feel very uneasy about how racism works. But I felt uneasy because I didn't really understand like the entire topic. And it's only like after you go into reading about it and learning that you like learn about 1 or 2% that makes you feel slightly more comfortable in the area. So sometimes it's not like, because I think somebody's saying that sometimes you have to think. Somebody on YouTube's mentioned a comment that said, "But part of the awakening process is questioning yourself and others to reach truth, but it shouldn't always be aired on social media in front of the world." Because sometimes you're just exploring ideas, and you're trying to like get to a point where you've got a decisive opinion, but some people, they do their learning online in an in an open process. So I think that becomes a problem, is that, you know, you're learning about a topic online as you're writing tweets about it or writing posts about it. Pardon?
I don't know what you had in that.
I'm woke, brother. I'm woke. Mujhe neend na aaye.
Oh.
That's
That's cringy, bro.
I'm thinking of loads, but I'll leave it out.
That's too cringy, bro. That's too cringy. That's one of those dreams.
1990.
I had to lighten it a bit of lightheartedness. But I totally appreciate what Altaf's saying, and it does make sense. And even with the people that are commenting, yeah, I do agree. And
now, just so that you know, people that are commenting have asked, "Are you in the bathroom because it's so echoey?"
I'm in a meeting room.
Is that what you call the bathroom nowadays?
Yeah, I know. The bathroom's HQ, headquarters.
Yeah, so
somebody actually asked that online. It wasn't me, bro.
No, it's fine, bro. I know. With a lot of Zoom calls and everything, people are attending meetings, and from the top half they're wearing a shirt and a tie, and from the bottom half they're just literally in pajama.
A couple of months back, I was on a few Zoom calls in it where people were like, "I can't find the unmute button," or, you know, when they join, you have to say, "Please press connect the audio in the bottom left corner so you can be on," and then you have to tell them to mute. Because everybody, you know, like before, you used to tell them, if there is a fire, please exit out of here.
Yeah.
Now you have to, before you start a meeting, you have to say, "Please, everybody, can you put yourselves on mute? Can you put your hands up if you're going to ask questions?
Yeah.
You know, please do not go toilet with your video on."
Yeah, that's
random things like that.
I've got a question for you. Have you noticed, like, maybe I'm being over analytical, but I've always noticed, even with myself, I fall into this. You know, the quote unquote controversial subjects in Islam, where there's like a lot more room for disagreement, and there's a lot more opinions involved, and masala, masail, all of that. They're a lot more interesting than stuff that actually benefits you, like learning about how to write a will or something like that, inheritance. But no, let's not learn about that.
That's a bit specific.
Yeah.
Learning how to write a will.
You know what I mean, innit? I'm just using it as
I thought you were gonna say something like learn how to do tayammum or.
Okay, tayammum then, but fiqh of inheritance is something that nobody wants to basically study in it. It's a boring subject, but it's going to help you more than learning about
inheritance.
what's the difference between a farid and this, and if I read this much times, and I don't get it. Like why is one subject, because it's like wrapped around with hocus pocus, and there's a lot more different opinions on this, it becomes a lot more, I don't know, what's the word? More interesting.
You should do a video
on what?
How to reverse becoming pleat, from pleat to bark. That's what you should call it, the video. I'm telling you, I'd be an amazing video that people would benefit from. They'd be like, you know what? You'd probably save lots of people from, missing their salah.
Bro, we're about to read namaz.
From pleat to bark.
I can't read namaz. My clothes are pleat. Why are your clothes pleat, bro? Me pleat on.
The pleat crew. The pleat crew.
Pleats are like a type of fold in your clothes.
Oh yeah, that's true. But I think going back to what Naveed's saying, I think I totally agree. This is the first time I kind of like heard this kind of like scholars dipping into areas which normally wouldn't be discussed on the minbar. Would be I think it was first time I ever heard was Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was. I mean, he didn't talk about controversial things per se, but it was like the first time he was discussing things that were like level, out of the 10 levels, level 6, level 7 kind of topics he was discussing.
He's adding a bit of sauce, wasn't he?
Yeah, so I mean, I think people tend to enjoy these kind of topics because it's something which they feel empowers them. If you learn how to do tayammum, that's not going to empower you, but if you learn, is Isa alayhi salam going to come down or not? Yeah. Does the Dajjal really exist or not? Is it something, because that, in a gathering, when you can come out with some points that you've learned from a scholar and you can kind of like use it against other people and they're kind of like, defenseless when it comes to these kind of topics. The idea of controversy, it kind of, it creates this power inside of people that they feel as though
some people tend to do
got
that.
one over the other.
Some people will do that. You'll be doing a generic lecture about something, and somebody will look at one minority opinion, study the beans out of it, and then come up to your lecture or attend your halaqah or whatnot and bring up that one controversial question to try and not take the attention away from you, but just to show you that I'm well versed in this subject. I've seen this happen.
It happened to Mufsab once as well.
What was that?
Evolution of Fiqh.
Oh yeah.
Evolution of Fiqh, the first one.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. I had a few too many Red Bulls. Remember that? Oh, that was messed up, man. I remember I had about 2 or 3 cans of Red Bull, one after the other, without having proper breakfast. And halfway through, I was feeling dizzy, and it's like my first time I was delivering a whole day lecture, the full day thing. And there was a guy, and this guy basically was a Qurani. Like that was the first time I ever came across. Actually, second or third time, but
when
first time.
Qurani rejects hadith, basically, yeah. Completely.
Yeah, so he was a guy who basically kind of like rejects the idea of Islam being based upon like narrations from the Prophet ﷺ. You should only have to follow what the Quran says, which seems very genuine, in reality. And interestingly, going back to Ali radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu has a statement where there was a guy, Khawarij, and he said to Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, look, all I want to follow is Quran. All I want to follow is Quran. So Ali radiallahu anhu said to the people, Kalimatul haq urida bihil batil. This is a very, very like a haq kind of statement, but behind it, there's sinister intentions behind it. So it's like people sometimes with controversy, I think that's a good way of looking at it. With controversies, people like to use like these Islamic cliches. Like, look, I'm not doing backbiting. I'm just telling you the facts. Yeah, as though they're very sort of like transparent with their sincerity. But in reality, they might have some ulterior motives where they're trying to, push something. So that guy basically was just like throughout, he wouldn't want to listen. he just wanted people to hear his view, irrespective of what I was saying. And and then the son came to me afterwards. The son was with him as well, and they're both doctors apparently. And the son came to me and apologized and said, "Look, my dad's like this. I can't do anything. I do apologize." And I told him to come to this talk. And but it's just like
probably it's fine. I think he was such a nice guy as well. That guy was professional.
Yeah, but sometimes I think what tends to happen with certain people is certain people are very vocal people. They like people to hear their opinion, right? And it's not. It might not be a case of they think they know everything, but it's just a matter of that's their kind of background profession, right? Certain types of professions you have out there, because of their university sort of like exposure that they've had to being able to criticize everything. They feel as though that they have the right to be able to speak about Islamic issues, and certain people will be uncomfortable with that. Some people will feel like, you don't have the right to talk about this. This is borderline blasphemous you're talking about. And others might say, no, let them speak about it.
I'm a bit, I'd say not prejudice is probably the wrong word to use. I'm very skeptical about someone that, no offense, that if somebody hasn't studied religion, even to like a basic level, and I mean, like, I don't expect them to be like a proper full-time student of knowledge, but if they start a conversation with, in my opinion, and they're talking about a religious matter, in my heart, I'll be totally honest, deep down, I'll just be thinking, you might as well just shut up now, because I'm not listening. Forget about it, go home. Maybe I'm a bit too harsh in that approach, but I'm like that, to be honest with you. If someone starts a conversation with, in my opinion, I was like, Tika, okay, bolo, like, it means nothing to me. Some people, I feel like they just like to vent. And they've got.
I think some people need to be able to vent as well.
I'm venting now.
No, but I think some people, you need to be allowed to vent, and in certain audiences, in certain environments, like if I was with a scholar, I would ask the questions that were on my mind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily ask them in public.
But what I'm trying to say is, the people I'm referring to, they have this conversation with your awam friends, whatever, that's fine. But when they'll come to somebody that's a scholar, and then they feel that they have to say, do you understand? But in my opinion, this guy studied 7-8 years, but your opinion obviously makes more sense. Okay.
I remember there's one guy here, I don't know, he might be watching as well. But there was one guy once, he came to me, you get that kind of guy who says, I've asked so many people this question and no one's giving me a right answer, right? I'm going to ask you it now. One of those ones, you think you just have, oh my God, what's your measure of getting the right answer? Like, how do you know someone has given the answer and it's not right? Like, do you have some sort of like a red or green light on your head or something that goes off as soon as the right answer is given to you? So he came to me and he said to me, he goes, in Islam, he goes, why is it that a woman's like witness is, a woman's witness is like this and a man's witnessing is like this? When in the narrating of hadith, you can have one narrator and he can even be a woman. So one single woman narrator can narrate a hadith and people have to act upon it. But when it comes to court cases, then he goes to me, I knew exactly the question he's going to say. Like, before he's even completed like 20% of the question, right? Your brain automatically just starts to, like Google, when you start typing Google, all the suggestions are coming up. So all the suggestions in my head are coming up now. Like exactly how I'm going to respond. So then when he goes, I've asked so many scholars this question and it's like none of them had the answer, that they were all at my feet. Yeah, because no one could answer this. And then I said to him, okay. And when he finished the question, I just said it like about 2 lines to him and he went quiet. Because that's such a common question like the classical scholars have discussed. And it's been dusted and answered like thousands of years ago. So I go, this is the answer. End of story. And then he went quiet, and then like after a while, I said, look, you wasted your time going to all those scholars to ask them a question. You should have come to me in the first place. I would have given you the answer, and you could have asked them other things.
Could have wasted your life on something more relevant.
Yeah. So I think sometimes I feel sorry for people out there because remember, Altaf, you were telling me this once. You said sometimes on social media you get some people who seem very, very loud. But when you meet them in real life, it's like total opposite. Like you don't even realize that this is the same person. And
my gosh!
After you said that,
it's the place where. Sorry, Mr. Karen.
No. I was just saying. After you said that, like my mind would actually start to kind of look at people on social media in that way, thinking that maybe they're just like this here because that's their, like you said, venting. This is their like venting space. They need to kind of like hit that, that punch bag. Like this is how where they do it.
Social media blurred the lines between introverts and extroverts. It completely blurred the line between those two, because now people like get that dopamine hit from that like, right? It doesn't matter how much of an introvert you are, right? You will post something on social media, on WhatsApp. Yeah, man, just go straight in there. And I think yeah, I wouldn't probably go down to that level, but it's the
too much sugar
dopamine
in
hit
there, bro.
that
Too much sugar.
I think it's the thing that they're chasing. It is a drug. It is a drug that it does that. But people, what happens is that they're very vocal online, and I found a couple of these people, and what happened is that I met them in real life as well. So like offline, I met them, and I was like, when I met them, I couldn't see. I could see that this was their platform to express themselves, which is fine and cool. My issue comes with the Mufti Sahib is that, when a person's not about what they talk about in real life, that they're not trying to move the needle on anything they talk about online. So they post about 52 different items online, but offline, they're not trying to do anything to move the needle on any one of those things. So they'll talk about Islam, they'll talk about Salah, they'll talk about youth. The amount of people that talk about young people and don't do anything for young people, probably including their own kids,
100%.
right? They don't do anything for them, and you just think to yourself, well, why are you even posting this? Like, spend some time just focusing on this and focusing on the community and what they're doing and so on and so forth, and get involved. Like, if you're not going to get involved,
what is Jerry's final thought? How do we solve this? And is it something that can be solved? What is the Islamic take on controversy? And is controversy the same as gossip? Do we stay clear away from it? Do we dwell into it? What do we do?
It's never gonna. I don't think it's gonna disappear.
I've asked 55 scholars this question, and nobody's been able to answer this question.
I'm surprised you know 55.
he has a very loose definition for what a scholar is, Mufti Sahib.
Oh, anyone basically with a beard.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Somebody posted that question this week. That was one of those questions that was on Muslim Facebook.
Some people will call anyone a scholar. Some people will study for years, and some people won't call people from their own Jama'ah scholars anyway, or refer to them as scholars. He's only wrote 32 books on the subject, and he's got a PhD. But chalo, don't worry. Call him by his.
I think that is something that it's very, very sort of like tricky area. I don't think that it's ever going to end. Controversy is never going to end. It's just a natural thing that humans have. They enjoy gossip. It all kind of fits in together, doesn't it? Backbiting, gossiping, sort of like, discussing something which has, like the Prophet ﷺ summed it up in a beautiful way. He said, from the beauty of a way of a Muslim is that he doesn't busy himself with that which doesn't concern him. It kind of sums up controversies, sums up all these kind of like drama, shama, all these kind of things. It's kind of summed up.
55 scholars later.
It doesn't bother. Sometimes someone will contact me. Like, they are on social media and there's like a topic that's been trending and I haven't been like, aware of it. And they said to me, oh, you don't know about this? I'm like, how come you don't know about this? What's your views on this? And I'm thinking, well, I don't have time to think about it. Yeah. So anyway,
I don't know. Somebody asked you that question.
Do you have to go, Nav?
I'm gonna go in about 5-10 minutes. Don't worry, carry on. We'll pretend that it's a natural finish. Sorry, that was. Are we still live?
Your
camera looks really good. The lighting.
Alhamdulillah, Musab.
MashaAllah. What is it? Is it your mobile phone?
Yeah, mobile phone.
No wonder, it's very, very good.
I thought to myself, I'm trying to up my my game, and I got my ring light on, so it makes it makes me seem like I got noor on my face.
No, you know what? It looks very sort of like pleasing to look at the colors and the balance, and you got the two screens in the background. Is it two screens or one screen? Oh, one. Oh.
How much inch is that, bro?
43.
Gamer,
man. No. This does look like a gaming chair though as well. But
remember I was telling you guys about the VR, yeah? My new phone, my VR, it doesn't work on my VR.
So, guys, by the way, if I'm looking down in this corner, it's because my laptop's here.
Nah, but you brush your teeth and pray Isha.
Come give salam. Listen, original hooligan.
Do you know what, Hamoudi?
Yo.
I've written about 4 responses to your posts, right? And I deleted every single one.
Why, brother? King of controversy here. Get in there, brother.
What was it about? Man United?
No, it's about homelessness.
Oh, forget football, bro. I'm trying to rid these Muslim areas of these crackheads, bro. They're literally doing my head in. No joke. Bro, I used to feel sorry for them, wallah, yeah. Thinking, why are these banks putting all these spikes outside the entrances? Let them sleep. But now that I work in Small Heath, oh my God. Allah save us, bro.
Is that too controversial for you guys?
Genuinely, may Allah make it easy for them, yeah. But we need to get them out of the areas because these guys are not even needy. They just want to do their drugs around here. And I can't even bring my son to work anymore, bro, because there's needles everywhere and it's just disgusting, man.
I think you got some crazy specific issue down there, but I wouldn't castigate all homeless people.
No, I always make a point in my post that I'm not talking about all the homeless people, yeah, because there's obviously some that are quite needy, and when people want to give money, just make sure that the person's actually needy is not going to spend it on drugs. Bro, people are there commenting saying, "Oh, let them use it on drugs. I'll give them money." Like, come on, man.
What's up? This is a good question I got for you. What's up? You know, in Islam, there's a concept of tamliq that takes place. The concept of tamliq is to give possessive ownership to somebody.
Okay.
Is that possessive ownership, so if I'm giving zakat to somebody, is it irrespective of what they spend it on?
Yeah, you can't dictate to them where they spend it.
So if a person is faqir upon nisab, right, based on nisab, gold, silver, kifaya, wherever you want to go with nisab, if somebody is eligible for zakat, and they hit that target, and I'm gonna give them my zakat, and they get possessive ownership of that, I have no right to tell them what to or what not to spend their money on.
You can't. I mean, like some individuals, they do kind of like what they do is like I remember a few cases that came in the past where a certain individual wanted to give a specific person wealth, but this guy basically he was a gambler. He had addiction to gambling, and he was in honest debt because of gambling. He's at £30,000 debt. Online gambling. So basically what happened was the family were afraid that if they gave him zakat, what's going to happen? He's simply going to go gamble it away. So, and this guy had like lots of bills to pay and like rent and stuff like that. So the way around that was basically what they had to do was they had to have a trustee who was on his behalf, was someone who was taking care of the zakat, and then he would spend it where he saw fit on the individual's needs and his family.
There's an even better solution to that.
Go on.
Give your zakat somewhere else.
What's his marketing, brother? Don't listen to him, yeah? Anyway, brothers, nice to meet you all, inshallah. I'm just buzzing, bro. Liverpool got trashed. Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum.
What's the score?
4-0, brother.
4-0, apparently.
That's why Arsenal's invincible.
That, my brothers and sisters, was Ahmed Saeed Hamoudi, very controversial brother on social media.
A brother who grips. Nah, mashallah. His posts are good. They're quite good because he's trying to deal with an issue.
Yeah,
and for me, it's like an issue that's quite close to my heart because obviously he's dealing with the homelessness. So when I read his post, obviously he's right.
Brother,
he does qualify them.
We are all homeless because our home, inshallah, is Jannah.
Allah. No, because home, less. We don't want a home less. We want a home more.
Allah.
Oh my gosh. Can
You
switch
open
my
the can of cringy. You open the can of cringy.
Who, me?
Cringy quotes, bro. No, you have to close it.
Like this, and share this if you love Allah.
You got those guys, isn't it? Love this and share this. Love this and share this. If you don't, then you don't. Now, you forgot that part.
If you don't, then don't.
I think we've come to a natural end to this podcast, guys.
Okay, let's check out the questions.
wait,
Any interesting questions? If you haven't hit the like, guys, you know what to do. Hit the like. If you like this podcast, hit the like. And if you didn't, hit the like.
To all the guys that don't like me.
No, if you didn't like it, hit the like twice.
You know, Altaf, your sound is not syncing with your video.
Is it not syncing
Your
anymore?
video's a bit delayed now.
You're like a kung fu movie.
You have been affected by, you've got the Hamoudi effect. We call this the
I
Hamoudi
think
effect.
I don't know, you know. Maybe there's something wrong with it. That's why it's the end of the podcast, Mufti Sab.
Allahu Akbar.
Hello lads, I'll take your ijazah. I'm gonna have to shoot now.
All right, guys. Jazakumullah khair for watching. And hopefully, inshallah, I hope you guys have benefited from this. And also, I mean, also some good things to kind of go away with. Like, for example, Naveed's ketchup, his ketchup controversy. I don't know what you've got with ketchup. And why is there ketchup in a conference room? That doesn't make sense to me.
No, we ate food here.
Oh, now it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I just was adding masala. Well, not masala. I was adding sauce to everything.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you then,
Inshallah.
guys.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.